Okay, so I don't know if it's sort of cheesy to start with a quote, but I found this John Cage quote that says, when uh, art, when it is art, is not separable from life, nor is dishwashing when it is done in this way. So I'm gonna do something really quickly, which is a little bit annoying, which is to move you guys to the bottom of the screen. That way I can read the text. Okay, so I tried to break down my general philosophy in a way that was like a little color coded, which was funny to me because it looks a little bit like I made it with crayons. So when my art making practice is at its best, which it's not always, obviously, then doing research for me is a way of making art, and making art is a way of doing research. And then I also teach and art and write about art. And so teaching and writing about art are also a means of doing research for me, and they are also a means of making art. So a lot of what I make could be categorized as experimental photography. And I wanted to sort of define that term because I think that in the sciences, there is sort of a different, if not more rigorous, definition of an experiment. But what I mean is kind of Wilhelm Flusser's definition from the book Toward a Philosophy on Photography, which is that experimental photography is a playing against the apparatus, or finding new ways of using photographic tools other than the prescribed ways. And then wanted to define my research philosophy, which is thinking about inspiration from the Latin root, which means to breathe or blow into. So you sort of breathe in culture when you do research, and you hold it in. And then when you make work, you're letting it out. And that's how culture propagates itself. We receive culture for a while, and then we pass it on through the work we make. I'm sort of a little bit plagiarizing that interpretation from Nayland Blake from the International Center of Photography. So this is a project I did in 2011. It is a unbound variable edition called This Folder May Contain Clippings and Other Ephemeral Material. That was the definition of the Library of Congress definition of the ephemeral files that I was working in when I was doing visual research on what a camera is. So an ephemeral file, which is sometimes called an artist file or a subject file or a vertical file, is an old analog image, like physical image database that some libraries have. The New York Public Library has the biggest one that I know of, called the Picture Collection. It's just loose materials, right? Like clipped from magazines, newspapers, books. It has postcards, sometimes like pamphlets and flyers. And then librarians catalog these things among subject matter. And for this project, I was looking at everything that they considered to be cataloged under the subject heading camera. So anything that they were calling a camera. And then I was reproducing all the images that I was finding in picture collections and ephemera files on sort of like, recreating them like on paper, similar to the original papers that they were printed on. And then I made variable editions, so no two were the same, of ephemeral files, so that people could have sort of the experience of discovering in images around the idea of a camera in a non-hierarchical way, right? Because when you use Google, you find images that are the most popular, but when you use like an analog picture collection, you just find the images that are there. And then I wanted to talk, so that is sort of a research project that became an art project, right? And then I wanted to talk about my art making philosophy, which is sort of similar, which is I approach making original visual material as what can I make that answers a question I have, is a manifestation of a response to my influences, and is in some way an experiment, as in I don't know what the outcome is until I make the work. And in that way, like making art is a type of research. So this is a project that I started at the end of graduate school in 2010. I was making a camera out of 2 copies of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and then the lens was marbles or a single marble. And at first I was getting, this is where it ended up though, which was just a box with a crystal ball inside. Because at first I was getting these images that just look like this. And what I actually was doing was I was just shooting the inside of the marble on film. So it took me a while to figure out that I needed to put the lens, because of the sort of extreme curvature of it, inside the camera. And then sort of like after doing optical tests, right, with these found lenses, I ended up with images that look more like this. And they were kind of like a collaboration between me and the materials. And so inside them were things from the different crystal balls, like aberrations and prism effects from refracting the light, and bubbles and nicks and things like that. So then my teaching philosophy is somewhat similar, right? Like I think of teaching as a form of research. I teach classes with the same title over and over again, but I never teach them in the same way. Like I use them as a way of learning more about subject matters I'm interested in, and making work when the classes are at its best, right? Like I'm making work with the students. And that's a way that we all can get more excited and learn something new, and then also create community. So an example of that would be, I did a teaching residency at Brock University in Canada, and we built this freestanding camera obscura. I had never done this before. I had the materials shipped to the school, and then they shipped me there. And so I was learning how to do this with the students as they were learning how to do it. And I learned some things from them, because Canadians are very handy about sewing and woodworking. And they learned some things from me about the history of the camera obscura, and then how you can make your own camera and make analog images with that camera. And then they made images. They came up with sort of clever things to do. Like this is one student who was doing drawings on acetate over photosensitive paper. And so he was making both sort of impressions and photographic images simultaneously. This is someone who's making chemograms. He was just like painting with chemistry inside the camera. So they did a lot of things that I wouldn't have thought of. And then we all had like a little show at the end at the college. We showed their work and my work. And then lastly, my art writing philosophy is that ties into my work, in that I think of writing as sort of a form of thinking. And art writing is also a way of building community, right? Like what you do when you write it for magazines and online platforms about artists is I usually don't write in a vacuum. I get to know the artists. Before COVID, I did studio visits, and we would go have coffee and talk about their work, and then maybe meet up again later. I always show people what I write before I publish it, and work on it somewhat collaboratively with them. I don't consider myself a critic. And in that way, writing becomes a little bit of an experiment too. I started writing also right after graduate school with this, with Conveyor Editions. They're in Jersey City. They are a publisher and a printer, an in-house printer, but they also make a magazine. Well, we did for 8 years. It was a artist collective magazine, and each issue was around a theme, and so we would research that theme and get to know it really intimately, because the magazine was annual. It came out once a year, but we worked on it all year. So this is from the an image from the alchemy issue, and then on the bottom an image from the time travel issue, and then this is an image from spectrum, which was all about light and color. And so like the research that I did over those years to help with that magazine really informed the work I was making as well in ways that I hope are apparent. And then now with them, we're doing sort of a more experimental publication called Mercuria, which is about Mercury, the god, the metal, the planet, maybe eventually the Freddy. And each issue is more zine-like and clips to the one before it. So it has this sort of expansive quality where it can become a stack. And then very, very lastly, I wanted to talk about the idea that showing work, right? When I'm showing work, when I feel like my practice is its best, I'm not showing work in a way that's static, right? Like putting prints, just like putting prints on walls. When I think about how to show work, I try and think about like, where do I want to show the work? Where does the work itself want to be shown? How does the viewer or audience or participant want to encounter the work? And can the showing of the work itself create like a new experiment, become kind of a way to open myself up to learning? So what happened here was I moved, I didn't move, I lived in that apartment for 15 years. I transformed my bedroom into a camera obscura. And then I was taking pictures inside it and live streaming the images. What happened that I didn't realize was going to happen was that somebody wrote an online article about it, and then a Google bot picked that up with my information and information from my website and sort of automatically created a Google Maps business. So my phone number and address were on Google Maps, and I didn't realize it. And a woman called me up and she said, can I come? I homeschool my son. Can I come bring him to your camera obscura? And that's how I figured out that I was being called a Google business and that my address and phone number were there. And so instead of asking them to take it down, I added pictures and invited people to write reviews. And then the way that work ended up being shown, I have images of it as well, but the way that work ended up being shown was that strangers would come over, and not necessarily art world people would come over, and then they would sit sort of in my bedroom with me and my dirty laundry, and we would talk about art. So the idea was that I was trying to make my camera my home, and my home my studio, and my studio my camera. So I didn't have sort of like designated art time. So I walled off my windows kind of permanently with drywall. And then I installed these single element lenses. And then they sort of created, like your eyeball does, a natural inversion of light projecting upside down onto my walls. And then I was sort of doing research as well and taking pictures of the research that I was doing and posting those online. And then I did the other window so that I had sort of a second camera obscura going on a curtain. And then I started live streaming it. That's actually how I found out I move a lot in my sleep. It would have been this project I kind of showed online, but then I ended up opening myself up to a new way of showing it, which was really useful for me. I have a breakout room exercise next, but I wanted to sort of ask if I said those things in a way that made sense, or if anyone had any questions. I kind of blew through the technical aspects. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, also about these technical aspects. Sorry. Yeah, like a question like about the method and the technical aspects, I guess, together. Like, I mean, when you're building these projects, right? Like when you're walling off your room and stuff, are you kind of following just like a protocol or a method or a formula, or do you have to develop the parameters and the materials yourself?
Both. So often try not to reinvent the wheel. So I read about ways that it's been done in the past. Those tend to not work out as they never work out sort of as well as I would have hoped. So then I end up having to make changes accordingly. So when I was making a camera that had like the crystal ball was the only lens, right? There wasn't anything I could, no, I don't know anyone who's done that before. So it wasn't like I bought a book on how to use a crystal ball as a lens, but I did do reading about how the human eye worked. And that helped inform what I was doing. And I did reading about optics, and that helped with my limited understanding of optics. That helped me make decisions. And then I made incremental changes. So that was sort of how I figured out how to get the lens close enough to the film, right? I kept making the camera smaller, and I just kept hacking it until it was smaller and smaller and smaller. And then I realized I had to just like move the lens inside. Other people do make camera obscuras. So I got a couple of books on the history of the camera obscura, which included some technical information. And then just like lots of Reddit dudes have threads about the best way to do that. And so it was a little a la carte, right? The lens that I found was from like a telescope parts shop. Sometimes I just order a bunch of things that seem like they might work and try each of them until one does.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so you got you've got like informed trial and error.
Yes, it's like informed, somewhat haphazard trial and error.
Okay. And I guess, I mean, the open source stream is always that, you can share as much about what you're doing so that no one else has to reinvent the wheel you invented, right?
Yeah. I teach this class at the International Center of Photography. That's like a 5-week class on experimental photography. It actually just ended yesterday. And the first thing that we did was because we're all stuck at home, the first thing that we did is we all turned our bedrooms into camera obscuras, because that's a thing you can do photographically at home. I've never been sort of the mind that now that I figured out how to do it, no one else can know.
Yeah. But do you have a publication method or like a documentation method or some way to kind of share the technical aspects of it all, or?
Yeah, there's so Faith Holland, who's a friend of mine, she's been doing these online events through this org she created called Well Now What the Fuck. And I did an online workshop on how to turn your bedroom into a camera obscura about 3 months ago for her org, and they either have put that on YouTube or are about to put that on YouTube.
Okay, cool. Nice.
I will, you know what? I will look for it and link to it in the chat.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, because that's always like, I'm always really impressed by what people have done in like art projects, right? And also like the amount of engineering really that goes into it.
Yeah, it's funny because we're not engineers, right? So the amount of engineering, I shouldn't speak for other artists, but the amount of engineering that goes into my art projects is sort of informed chaos.
Yeah. But it works, right? Like that's kind of the whole.
Yeah.
That's how you even can say that it's successful, right? Like you get an outcome.
Yeah.
But then because like if you are like an engineer with an engineer's training,
mm-hmm.
right? We're doing very different projects,
mm-hmm.
but he'd have like a set of tools where he was like, oh, okay, this is how I'm going to write like a method section
mm-hmm.
that's go in some kind of paper, and then people can do exactly what I've done, right? But then with a more haphazard approach, right, you kind of have to explain a bit more anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if there's like a good kind of way to like share the knowledge, but also share the kind of the zaniness of it, right? Like the haphazard element.
Yeah, I think part of that is to sort of record everything.
Yeah.
It's worth thinking about. I don't think that I do that effectively, right? I think that I share it in a way that's meaningful with students. And I think I share it in a way that's meaningful with people who reach out to me just via email. But it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as long as people can contact you, like that's great, right? That's pretty fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what if society collapses and then
We're almost there. um, yeah. I know what you're saying. I don't think that I've
yeah,
done
I don't
interviews
know.
that exist in magazines and videos that exist on the internet, but not necessarily any of those things is necessarily archivable, or at
Yeah.
least being archived. I guess they are archivable. That actually speaks to, this is the last thing that I'll say because I don't want to take up too much of my allotted time before we do the breakout rooms, but that actually speaks to my sort of love of archivists and librarians, and the relationship between artists and archivists and librarians. When I was in school, I had just this work study job in a library, in an art library, and it kind of, what a resource librarians and archivists are to artists, in ways that you wouldn't suspect, and the degree to which they want to help kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's like peer to peer, like passion sharing, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when I worked there, there was a librarian who I had just sort of this kind of like zany idea that I wanted to catalog myself in the Library of Congress database. And so he cataloged me as an object that was out on permanent loan to myself. And he like measured me and put my dimensions in, and like put my author down as the place I was born. He sort of interpreted the information of my life in a way that was really interesting. And he had no problem. I think people think of librarians as stuffy. He had no problem putting that in the Library of Congress database. Okay, you guys ready to do a breakout room exercise? Cool. All right, so what I was thinking was, this is something that I would sort of like to do with you too, is to think of a project you've started or would like to start, and then without overthinking it, sort of switch your position and write a letter to yourself from the point of view of that project. So what does your project want from you, right? Anything from building an art installation to knitting a sweater, right? Like, what does the sweater want? What can you learn from the project? Like, what does the project want to teach you? Can you use the project to answer a question? Like maybe the question you brought, if you brought one, can you sort of use the materials to answer your question? And then how or where does the work want to encounter other people, or doesn't it? And if it doesn't, why? So I can send that as a message to the breakout rooms when I create breakout rooms. What it'll basically, and then I'll pop into each of them. So basically what you're doing is you're anthropomorphizing something that you want to work on, and then figuring out what that something wants from you and what you can learn from it. What happens when I create breakout rooms in a perfect world is that it sends you a little message asking you if you want to join. So I'll just very randomly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll just very randomly set it to 5, which is 3 to 4 participants per room. and then it'll assign us all a room. We'll, like work on writing that for 10 minutes and then share ideas with each other. Maybe screenshot it so you can put it in the chat when you get back, and I'll pop into each one of the rooms. Can everybody see the chat? Cool. You want to, if you can't, there should be a button that says chat at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, it should bring the chat up. If you want to cut and paste the questions, I put them in there. Okay. Everybody should be getting a thing that says, do you want to join a breakout room? Anybody having trouble with the breakout rooms?
Hey, Liz. Alice, you're muted.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi.
You're the breakout room with no one from Edge, so I get why you called me.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your question?
I think we're not
Oh, yeah.
100% sure.
Okay, so hey Sally, how's it going?
Yeah, good, thanks.
What's a project you're working on or want to work on?
But individually, right? We
Yeah.
should do this. We weren't sure about the time scale within the group.
It's 10 minutes, which is now 8 minutes. And then when you're done, screenshot it so you can share it with everyone you can get back, but then you'll have sort of 5 minutes to share your ideas with each other. But I can walk you through it. So what, Sally, is a project you either want to start or have started?
It's hard to think about one right now, but yeah, I don't have like now a specific idea that.
Okay.
I have one.
What is it?
It is, so I'm doing a course on systems mapping, which is like about understanding forces in systems. And I want to try to understand what motivates people to do meaningful things.
What motivates people to do
it's very,
okay.
Instead of like unmeaningful things, pointless things. Yep.
Okay. So the point of view can be the point of view of the course, or it could be the point of view of the students. What is more useful to you?
So I'm taking this course.
Oh,
so
you're
I think
taking the
maybe, yeah, so I think maybe the map is the point of view.
You're saying the map? Okay.
Yeah.
What does the map want?
What does the map want? I think the map wants to be logical and show a slice of reality. I think it wants to have a strong point of view and represent something that exists outside of the map.
All right. What would a strong point of view look like? Like, how will you know if the map has a strong point of view?
I will know that by being able to tell stories based on the visual, on the words and the connections. And when I hear those stories, or when someone else hears those stories, they should be able to like say, yeah, that's how I also experience the world. That is why I don't do meaningful things, or that's why I do meaningful things.
You know what I think also the map might want is the map probably itself wants to be meaningful.
True. That's true. Yes.
Okay. Do you want to write about it while I talk to everybody? Just sort of stream of consciousness? Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. Who else has a project in mind? All right. What's your project?
I'm currently working on a VR installation, and it started actually with the subject of FOMO, like fear of missing out. We know all with like being, especially like in social obligations or missing out an event. But I thought about, okay, like if you take this kind of fear further, what is another fear of missing out? Like, for example, am I not like an activist enough, or am I not like taking care about climate issues, or am I not like protesting enough, or like you know you can like turn this into a positive kind of thing. So, but and I want to work as well with the subject of fear, and I feel, and especially with VR, it's like something where you can get kind of immersed and like in a meditative state, and you and because I'm doing like this, it's a sensorial installation. So your breath is taken from a sensor, and this triggers things in the VR, so you can steer like the character or your environment inside of the VR world. And then this is getting back with another kind of sensor, which is a breathing material that kind of puts pressure on your body. So it's as well taking the body into this whole process of experiencing. So you don't just have like this cognitive kind of experience, but you have like as well physical inputs. And that's where I'm working on now. And yeah, fear and actually like in a neurological way is my interest too.
I have a sort of guess, but you can tell me if this is right or not. To some degree, it seems like a project like that, if it's about a fear of missing out and then it's highly technical, it seems like a project like that, if I were to anthropomorphize it, might want to be accessible to people who don't have VR technology. What do you think?
Yeah, it's true. I try actually to think about this too, but yeah, it is already kind of inside of the project constellation that you can enter it throughout a multiplayer platform as well, as long as you have internet and a computer, and then you have the person in VR, and you maybe have a different experience because you don't have the VR obviously, but you have a character so you can interact through the net with each other. Yeah.
So it sounds like you know what you want from the project. Do you feel like you could think about what the project wants from you?
I find with the accessibility, this is one thing, but as well breaking things down a little, because I feel I'm always like quite ambitious, and maybe it feels stressed out to be too much. I don't know.
Okay, do you want to write about it just sort of stream of consciousness style?
Yeah.
And then sort of share your thoughts with us? What about you guys? Did you think of a project?
Yeah, I can talk. Sorry.
Well, you can go ahead if you want. I'm already writing, kind of.
Oh, good.
So yeah, I will talk about something which is like a piece of collage. So I I needed to renew my visa like after 2.5 years, and usually to renew the visa I needed to have all of my bank statements sent to me by post, because these are the evidence I would use. But actually, like, first, ethically, from an environmental point of view, I didn't need them to be printed out, but I had to. So anyway, as part of that, I was collecting all of these envelopes, and on the envelopes from the bank there are like the word private on both sides in like some ways. So it was interesting for me that these are my bank statements, which I didn't even care to open until it came the moment that I needed them for that visa application. And it's about like this thing, what is private and what is not private, because the moment I opened them, it was the moment when I needed to share them with others, which bridged this privacy. So I teared up all of these papers that has the word private. So I have like some of these papers, and I want to make a collage out of it.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah, and so, yeah, and I wanted to use just the materials that it is there from these papers, like not exactly that, just that, but I mean, I don't want to photocopy the word private or use other private. I only need to use this one that I had. So that's the idea.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. If you think about sort of the nature of the collage, or what the collage will look like, or what else will be in the collage, one way you could think about it is sort of like, what kind of collage did the paperwork want to become?
Yeah.
If you think about sort of what it is, what would it rather be?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I need to think about that. It's just the only thing that is at the moment like holding me back from starting it, because the moment I started, I can't like redo it because I'm using these materials.
Yes.
Is that how can I represent the context? Because if I put just these words private, it doesn't give a background about the whole story. So I was thinking whether I would need some numbers, or like I made some photocopies, but a bit like kind of like experimental photocopies of the statement, the bank statement, just to put it in the background. So I need to think about the structure of how to represent it.
Okay. So in that case, do you feel like you could take some pressure off yourself and just kind of anthropomorphize the paperwork and then ask it to tell you what kind of collage it wants to be? Just without overthinking it, just writing down whatever you think.
Yeah, Okay,
Good.
cool.
So do that for a few more minutes and I'll come back.
Thanks.
Sure.
Be free with these human spirits. Oh, so I should probably tell you what the project is. The project is working with an EEG sensor, and creating an immersive installation from an EEG.
Okay, starting.
Thank you. Hi all, I'm just checking in on all the rooms to see where people are.
Yeah, no, it's going well. Yeah, we've just been talking about what we have written so far and kind of, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys feel like you're good with about like 3 or 4 more minutes?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Great. Okay. I'll hop out of your room then.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Bye.
Don't forget to screenshot what you've written and bring it back.
I don't know. I think I have like a lot of issues with the EEG sensors as a way of like understanding your body, as in like, or maybe I just thinking about Western science as like the end all be all of information of the body. And so the perspective was of this EEG sensor just like wanting to consume. And yeah, it was a really interesting activity.
Are you guys good with a few more minutes and then we'll go back to the main room?
I think we're done, maybe.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Don't forget to screenshot your letters or notes or whatever it is that you made if you'd like to bring them back into the room.
Oh.
And if you want to. If you don't want to, don't.
Just share like a photo, the screenshot on the messenger, or?
Yeah, I was thinking there's a place where you can put a file into the chat if you're comfortable, but if you're not comfortable, then don't do it.
Mine's a bit evil. I feel like.
Worst critic, it happens.
All right, I'll see you guys back in there in a couple minutes.
Are you gonna, you bring us back in, right?
Yeah, I just hit close rooms.
Okay, cool.
Discuss it, and I guess,
Hey.
I was gonna check in on you guys and say we're probably gonna go back into the main room in a couple minutes. So if you have something you wanna share in the chat, screen grab it. Otherwise, how's it going in here?
good.
Oh, yeah.
We've been pretty separate, doing our own little, we had a little discussion in the beginning and then got to it, I guess. Yeah, I don't know how everybody else found it.
Yeah, it seemed like some people are writing on their own and some people wrote on their own and have shared with each other. If you'd like to screenshot what you wrote, you can share it in the main chat too when we go back.
Okay.
Okay.
Handwrote notes, so no one's going to read that.
Awesome. You can take a picture if you want. I just take a picture with my cell phone, or you can keep it to yourself too. It's totally up to you. I hope that it was helpful and fun, or at least not arduous and taxing.
He's staying away from the beach
today. Right, quite right. I think so.
Yeah.
Sensible.
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, I think we're gonna bring everyone back in a minute or two. So if you feel comfortable sharing what you did in the chat, feel free to take a screen grab of it. And if not, that's okay too. Hi.
Hi.
So, at the bottom of my chat is a button that says file. Do you guys have that as well? Okay. Show of hands. I saw some yeses and some nos. Okay. I think it depends on sort of maybe how recently you've updated Zoom or the type of account you have. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put my email address in here. If you can upload a file and you'd like to upload a file, go for it. If you can't upload a file and you'd like to upload a file, email it to me and I'll upload it. If you don't want to share what you wrote, you don't have to.
I'm going to hold on to mine.
Cool. I can get behind that decision. It's for you. So I think everybody's back. So what I just said was at the bottom of some people, depending on the version of Zoom you have, at the bottom of your Zoom, there should be a button that says chat. If you click the button that says chat, you should see a chat window. Some people have a button that says file in the chat window. If you do, feel free to upload a picture of what you wrote. If you don't, you can email it to me and I'll upload it. If you don't want to share it, don't do either. Sound good? All right. Ashley, did you want us to take like a 2-minute leg stretching break before you went, or did you want to just jump into it?
It's up to you guys. How does everybody feel? Do you guys want to like do a jumping jack or something? I guess.
Go ahead.
I guess we can take a minute. I don't know. Yeah, do a little stretch.
2 minutes.
Oh, Bjorn kind of cleverly figured out that you can just cut and paste it in the chat too if you want. I don't know why I was making things more complicated than they need to be.
Should we do that too then, or?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay. I just put the file there.
Either any of those ways.
Did you say how can we maybe share or get access to them after the?
That's what I was thinking. That I would pass them along to you if people were comfortable.
Okay. Cool. So then we should email them to you so that we don't lose them in the chat.
Oh, okay. I typically, I have Zoom set to archive chats.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I forgot that was a thing. Cool.
I live here now in Zoom.
You're the librarian of your life.
Funny enough, that is how I met Liz. Backstory is she was the librarian at ICP, and I think I was taking a continuing education class there, and then I first met you that way. It's really funny. Full circle. Okay, is everybody stretched out and ready for another presentation? Yeah? Okay. I wrote everything down because if I talk through my presentation, I'm just gonna go off on tangents. I'm not very organized in that way. So bear with me as I read through the presentation. But let's get to the screen. Yeah, and if you have any questions during, feel free to put them in the chat and we can answer them after. And we can also do a Q&A after the second breakout room after this presentation. So many options. Okay. How do I move you? Sorry, hold on. Okay. So I also started with a quote. It is quite cheesy, but I love it. This is a quote actually that I found. I was going through my notebook, which you'll see some doodles I've done. later in the slides, but I was going through my notebook and I wrote this down maybe a couple years ago. And so I thought it was relevant. Art, the way that I make art is quite similar to Nan Golden's quote, which is art as an outcry and mechanism for survival. Most of my process is around understanding myself in the world and my relation to things outside of myself that I don't understand, and like the interwovenness of self and other. So basically, I'm just trying to figure out how to survive and live and make in that process. I made some graphs. I've been on a kick of making graphs. So I'll just say briefly, the thing that I love about science is that there are so many rules during the process of obtaining and creating knowledge. And the thing that I love about art is that there are absolutely no rules in the process of obtaining and creating knowledge. And since most of my work is about understanding systems, as in like what they tell us, what they exclude, how they assist us or fail us, I felt it was important to make a chart, which for the most part is probably like pretty arbitrary and constantly changing, but for the sake of just better understanding right now, I made this. And I would say the creative cycle is basically what motivates my art. It's what I obsess over, and trying to understand the complexities of thinking and feeling in my body. And so the first part, which you'll see is like the purple one, which is I first go through an experience, so I embody a force. And then I go through this feeling of the experience, which is validating an immaterial as material. Then I question, which is intellectualize the physicality of the experience and dig deeper into understanding the system that is related to that experience and its boundaries. And then production, which is the object making as a point of closure. It's bringing the unknown into a space of knowing in order to re-embody the experience through a self-actualized system. And then I have it interwoven with research. So research is the mechanism I use to make sense of the world. The object making, which is a motion towards extraction, sort of getting out all of these complexities into one single object in order to understand it better. I curate as well, so I see exhibitions as an expanded artwork, an attempt to engage with diverse perspectives in order to grow personally, artistically, and culturally. I also participate in residencies and collaborations as expanded resources and to challenge my perspective. I read, write, and do a lot of movement workshops. So in my previous life, I was a dancer, and I continue that aspect of myself. And I'm in constant oscillation between movement and stillness, depending on the mood and where I'm at in life. And then just like a really big portion of it, which you'll see is both yellow and feeling and nonsense. And so much of the good stuff comes from play. The ability to let go of everything that you've consumed and just play. When you let go of your mind, you give credit to your body, and the unconscious slips out to reveal something previously unknown. So my main topic that's kind of the thread in all of my artwork is the self as a microcosm of the cosmos. I believe the deeper that we are connected to our internal self, the more connected we become to the external world. My method for navigating this space between self and other utilizes art, philosophy, and science to locate the bounds of the sensing body, and then disrupt, reposition, and seek new forms of embodiment that challenge pattern thinking. So the first project we'll go into is reflections. So in reflections, I build a two-way mirror with a camera hidden inside. I put the mirror on a fence in Coney Island, and from a distance photographed people as they stopped to engage with their reflection. The concept came from an interest in visually understanding Lacan's notion of the mirror stage, which you'll see at the bottom left-hand corner. That's just a visualization of it. By interrupting public space to offer individuals a private interaction with themselves, I noticed the value of self-representation in a world of other. I was able to view subjects arrested in a paradoxical experience that simultaneously drew them both in and outside their physical selves. Each photograph presented a private experience in self-recognition and offered a sense of disconnection in a fleeting moment of self-reflection. And I should just probably say that all of my slides, or most of my slides, are going to have books in them. And these books are ones that I was reading during the time of each project. Yeah, in the time of each project. So yeah, so there's that. Okay, so Misconnections was a project that created a platform for me to navigate the threshold of individual and projected identifications. While gender inevitably played an important role in how I processed the work, I was more enamored with the systems embedded in the performance of self. In acting out the descriptions posted on the online cruising platform Misconnections, which I'll show you this next slide. For those who aren't familiar, it's quite popular in New York. It's an online platform where you can find your apartment, you can find furniture, you can find sex, you can find a bike, anything you really want. And so on the left side, if you go to Craigslist.org, this is the first page you'll see. And then under community, you'll see Misconnections. And when you click on it, you'll see on the right side, you know, I just took a snapshot a couple days ago, and this is everyone's post. And while some of them may be real, I would say maybe about 3% of them would be real. A lot of them are just made up in order to cruise, to get people to respond. Yeah, and they're really funny. And you'll see on the previous post, you can read the one that was written, that was about, I think, 2014 this was done. So you can see what they've said. And if you go to my website, you can see some more. They're really funny, strange, but funny. So yeah, so in acting out the descriptions posted on the online cruising platform Misconnections, I noticed there was a stark difference between the physical reality of a moment and the memory of that moment. These images are representations of a reality processed through an anonymous body behind a screen. Each image pictures two bodies interwoven, the seer and the seen. This work helped me visualize the metaphysical body as a porous entity consisting of both self and other. I found similar patterns of individual abstraction in my series, The Spectacle of You. With an interest in the act of curating oneself, I focused on men's profile pictures on dating apps such as Tinder, Happen, and Bumble. I don't even think Happen exists anymore. Anyway, tipping my hat to Penelope and Brico, I gathered hundreds of sunset pictures examining the collective use of and participation in mental manipulation through symbolic imagery. The sunset, being the #1 most photographed thing on Flickr, was being pushed to new limits of attraction in these dating apps. As a symbolic tool for the collective, it was used to shape a system of beliefs that aid in desire. The sunset, a symbol of romance, beauty, and mystery, quickly became a trope for gaining access to women. I made a book from this series where you could slide the images left or right to view them, as well as a video which invited you into a physicality that mimicked the use of these dating apps, where your body would be on view in a space separated from your head. The sensory space between self and other was, and still is, the driving force for my research. Through Others is a compilation of strangers I met in Arles and New York that I believed resembled me. I approached each subject in passing when I felt a visual link between their look, actions, and movements and mine. I was exploring how we visualize ourselves through external means and how those visualizations might inform our sense of individuality. In focusing on the relationship between sight, self, and other, I contemplated how micro choices shaped by culture, experience, and social practices establish macro routines that become embodied knowledge carried through our daily lives. This work was a method for understanding the ontological basis of self-formation. It was a way to examine the relation between individual and social structures that determine one's sense of existence. Soma was a feeling I was trying to pull out of my body in 2018. In the objectification of a feeling through art making, I'm able to disrupt pattern thoughts that circle me to nowhere. The piece was named after the calming drug in the novel Brave New World and alludes to the decision to take attention away from the sensorial body in an adverse social or cultural system. The hand-blown glass sculpture was modeled after Santiago Ramon y Cayal's drawing of the pyramidal neuron found in the hippocampus, which is associated with memory, learning, and emotion, which is what you see in the center here. There was something really sensory about his drawings. It got me thinking about the role technology plays in the evolution of body knowledge, which I'll speak about more, as this is kind of where my work has been lately. The next slide. So nonsense as research. I included these drawings because I didn't make them to be shown. There's no way to give you context in order to make them have sense for anyone but me. They're time maps of feelings with no words. And as I move forward, I find that these drawings are actually deeply embedded in my work, yet they don't have a language. The first one, actually the first two have a word now. Entropy. So I had drawn this in 2017, and in 2018 was having a conversation with another artist who had similar interests. He introduced me to the term entropy, and the YouTube explanation he had shown me reminded me of this drawing. It took a full year of living life, meeting people, and talking about experiences for me to make bits of the unconscious conscious. These drawings have become the outset for my recent interests, which involve the body, the unconscious, and quantum mechanics, which I will also talk about later. So the next phase is curating as research. In 2017, I had actually all of my artwork and backup stolen. So in 2018, I basically just extended my practice to include curating and collaborating with others. Curating became a way to host research topics I was excited about and understand the complexity of objects and their relation to the making and seeing body. It also helped me gain a more embodied awareness of the systemic issues that marginalize communities within the art context and think about new ways to disrupt this network so that being in and making art didn't have to be weighted with unnecessary suffering. There Is No Threat, which was one of my first projects in New York, was a container for interpersonal and cultural conflicts happening at that time. The title simultaneously references the physical space, which is a crumbling place of transition, and a global cultural space, where previously that year, a nuclear bomb threat impacted the minds and bodies of an American state. If you're not familiar, there was a nuclear bomb threat that had gone off in Hawaii, and the picture is at the bottom left. It's a real picture, which is saying that there is no threat, that the nuclear bomb threat had actually gone off accidentally. So it was interesting to think about the technology. What is the technology that we have that such things can actually happen in 2018. And yeah, and I was just really fascinated because we were already 2 years into the Trump presidency, and everybody was already feeling very threatened. And then there's this like beautiful sign with palm trees that says there is no threat. Yeah, there was a lot going on, but it was really interesting. So the exhibition enabled me to process the complexity of sensations I was experiencing both inside and outside my body at that time. The feeling of deep loss matched with an unwavering sense of threat. I was also working in the news, so I was embodying these algorithms of cultural confusion, negativity, and suffering. The artists and works that were selected came from this space of being. The Salamander Devours Its Tail Twice was inspired by the relationship between the Ouroboros and self-actualization. The title came from Ray Bradbury's book, Fahrenheit 451, and references the moment a firefighter who supports a system that destroys books makes a plan to destroy the system which supports his existence. It was a perfect reference to the feedback loop I was sensing I was in during that time, one between self and system. Okay, so the next phase is residencies and collaborations as research. This work was conceptualized on a residency at Lizard Point in Cornwall, where I spent most of my time alone staring at the ocean, contemplating the relationship between rocks and water. In the moment of observation, I contemplated how the rocks determined the movement of the water, but later realized the formation of the rocks, moving at a much slower pace and unseen by the naked eye, were formed by the movement of the water. During that time, my body's nervous system was heavily stressed, and although I didn't realize it then, by intuitively reaching towards water and land, movement and stillness, magic and measurements, I was seeking to understand the relation between the scientific body and the sensory body, as well as the mechanisms that oscillate me between the two. Rogue is an interactive installation, conceptually amalgamating Stephen Helmrich's lecture on the quantification of ocean waves and Rebecca Solnit's erratic blue horizon line between sea and sky. I paired Solnit's commentary on understanding the immateriality of the body as it simultaneously occupies two spaces in its relation to sight, with Helmrich's explanation of our data-driven cultural desire to define the ephemeral. In a time where technology has enabled individuals to become more and more measurable as a materiality, I find myself curious about the unseen and immeasurable energies that deeply connect us. The installation invited viewers to visually access their heartbeat by touching the sensors located nearby. There's like a very, very thin green dot next to the circle. The circle was, the circle in the back was my installation, which actually moved when you hit the sensors, which are those green dots right nearby. So neither here nor there is a recent collaborative project that expands on these interests explored in Rogue. It investigates how Western culture understands the body in and through science and technology. It is an attempt to unfold ways the sense body gives into an entanglement of self-quantified, data-driven machine logic. We synced an EEG sensor to software that visualizes the hardware's quantification of cognition. Our video is a recording of the sensor output as influenced by abstract nature sounds, which I will play for you in a minute. So the technology evaluates the sitter's ability to meditate. We visualize this through expanding, contracting objects and fast and slow moving objects, which are low-high meditative states. Additionally, we included beta waves, which I believe is conscious thinking, if I'm correct, to navigate the clarity of the moving objects as they oscillate between the conscious and the subconscious, which you can see through light and dark. This is a video that was supposed to be an installation, but due to COVID, it just became an online video. And it's not necessarily meant to show proof, but to demonstrate the limitations of technology and how they navigate our perception of self. And so I will show you. Just a couple minutes of it. So you kind of get the idea there. Whoops, that's not the one you want. There you go. So I'll just end with some notes that I have now. This is my current research. I've recently been researching human cognition and quantum biology as part of a research residency I'm participating in London. I'm not ready to say too much, as I have a lot of nonsense that I need to go through before I have a language. But I'll just end with these images and I'll briefly describe what they are. So the left, the first one is the prefrontal cortex of a mouse. The second one is dark matter. And I was super interested, well, I'll say this in a second. The third one is a 3D scan that I made while thinking about scanning a wave or measuring a wave. The 4 is just veins of the leaf. And then 5 is this ocean edge, the relationship between rocks and water. So yeah, the deeper we fold into our body, the more it looks like the space of the unknown. I don't know who is creating these simulations, but I think there is something interesting about the way that technology is understanding the unknown, both inside and outside of ourselves, and how they all seem to be interwoven. So this idea that the brain of a mouse looks quite similar to the dark matter of the universe. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but they're just notes and motivations for future research or for future projects. So I'll end with that. And then I guess we can go into questions. I don't know, do we want to go into questions before we do breakout? Or does anybody have any questions? Okay, we can just go into the breakout and then do questions.
Oh, there's a chat message. Hang on.
Oh, sorry.
Manuel says, hi, Ashley. Okay, not a question.
Hello. Okay, let's do the breakout and then we can just save all the questions for us after. So this is, here we go. Oh my goodness. This is my first Zoom time. Okay. So here we go. So it's a three-part breakout. First, I want to ask everybody to actually move. So why don't we do that now, and then I'll describe the number 2 and 3. So everybody, if you can, take your computer or your phone and go to a different place in your home, a different place in the room, just anywhere. Okay, so is everybody in a new place?
I can't be because I've got wired equipment.
Perfect. That works perfectly, so no problem. All right, so I'll just go into step 2 and step 3. So the idea for this, let me make this bigger, was to find a new spot in your area, not think too much about it. The idea is to think about how space impacts your interconnection between body and object. How do you feel? Are you less comfortable? Are you unable to move because of Wi-Fi or wires? So in this new space, if you can be as present as possible and listen to how your body reacts to the invisible forces and what means to the next phase, the work you create. So if you're unable to move, that is also part of it as well. What is to be excluded, to be forced to stay still when someone else is moving, and how does that make you feel, and how that feeling, well, how is it going to impact the next step? So the next step is to create an object using materials of your letter. So the point is to act as a disruption to your process. Interruptions force you to be resourceful and inventive. So if you wrote your lesson on a computer, think about how to it. If you wrote it on a piece of paper, you can use your hands, make an object from it. Be creative, be inventive, and think about how your format shapes how you understand and communicate your object. And then the next step, which I can't see because I need to move you guys. Okay. So the next step is to name your object, title, and think about what the title does to the perception of the object. Does it accurately communicate its meaning? What is lost in the system of defining? So we'll go into breakout rooms for the next 20 minutes, and Liz will be in charge of that.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have any before we do that, let me know.
All right. Do you want to cut and paste this and put it in the chat so people can take it with them?
Yeah, can I do it as a picture?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a little file button at the bottom of the chat?
Yeah, I got it.
Cool.
Cool. It's uploading. Should be shared soon. Okay.
All right. Does everybody see that in the chat? Can you guys download it? Cool, cool. Let's see. All right, I think edge. I think I'm gonna exchange. There, open all rooms. Huh. Hey, Ashley, are you still here or did it assign you a room?
Hey.
Hey, how did it go in your room?
Sorry?
How did it go in your room?
Oh, yeah, no, it's cool. Yeah. My writing was actually in my notebook, so it was kind of working with how to make that into an object in itself, and yeah.
That's fun. I am in the process of making my text in some very terribly sounding music in Audible.
Wow.
I keep saying Audible, but I mean Audacity, because Audacity has a hard time recognizing files, so you can actually tell it lots of different types of files are audio files, and then it tries to play them.
That's so cool. I'll have to check it out.
Cool. So is everyone back? How did it go? How was that experience being in a different space? Did the space being in a different space impact the object that you were making? Did it not matter because you were staring at a screen and maybe your body isn't registering the movement of the space because you're in this like virtual world? I don't know, so many options, I guess. Does anybody want to share that experience or what they made or have any questions?
I wanted to make something with origami, so perhaps I should have used the screen that was sitting in front of me, because I struggled with this piece of paper, so it ended up being a drawing instead.
Nice.
So I kind of had this barrier of I'm not allowed to use the screen, but I should have done.
We
were talking about the sirens earlier, and I moved outside, and it's now like the outside of Neukölln, and it's quite stressful to be out here. So like, even though I have a nice garden, it's cute, but it's just also like sounds. It's interesting.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Thinking about how just your environment, like although it's in the outside of your body, how it really is deeply affecting yourself and your ability to produce or to think or to be.
I think mine was more influenced by the fact, well, I'm on the patio now, and so not being in the house, I'm not surrounded by these things that I have to do. And so it kind of frees me up to look at what's around me and have more tangible experience, or be more present in the place where I am. And so what's nice is this room is a lot brighter than where I was inside. And so I also have natural things around me that I'm really interested in. So I have these rocks with polka dots on them. And so I was using those for my project.
Nice, very cool. And
broke the rules because I couldn't handle the computer anymore. So I came back inside and I took a piece of nature with me.
Yeah.
So that was my way of dealing with it.
Ashley, it looks like you have a question in the chat.
Sorry. There are a few things.
Yeah, from Manuel earlier.
I think maybe keep talking might take a minute to read some of this.
Does anyone have something that they want to share in the chat? I noticed that that this graph showed up. Hold on. From Manuel. Do you want to say anything about it?
Well said.
What's that?
Manuel's microphone works.
Oh, okay. Well, I quite liked it. I thought that it was fun. Let's see. I have something from Taylor too. Oh, it's a picture of the rock. Oh, I love the diagram around it.
Actually, not a rock. It's a piece of lichen, but close.
Do you want to say something about it?
No, yeah, just what I basically I couldn't handle. I couldn't handle using the computer as a way to make something. It's been something that's been frustrating me for a long time during the confinement, is being forced to use the computer to make things. And so I just took the text and I turned it into a physical object as these ideas rotating around the thing that I was thinking about. So it's kind of like Susan said, it's just like a mind map of this project. And I used Ashley's diagram as kind of an inspiration for how to structure the this like opposition between creativity and research, and just mixing it all together in a way that made more sense. So yeah, it's just a mind map.
They also sort of feel like they orbit the object.
Yeah, I was thinking of a title, and I think talking about space and the microcosm, and lichen as a microcosm for a larger system in a larger environment. So yeah, I think it all that's just my visualization of it.
I have something from Susan too. Let's see. New share. I think I need to stop. Sorry guys, thanks for your patience. There it is. Open you. Okay, there we go. Oh, that's beautiful. Let's see. Do you want to tell us about it?
Well, this was my letter. I wrote it out, and so I was kind of channeling the idea of Karen's, the salts would pile these up and use them for directional markers and for leaving letters and stories and things. And so if I had had more time, I would have used more of my rocks, but that's kind of what I was channeling for this one. Because my list was more about letter or things that I need to remember to do. So this is kind of letter home, because I was using the voice of my mother when I was writing my letter.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Let's see. I have one more in the chat called "Hey L" from Leanna. Am I saying your name correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
You have a different version than I have.
Oh.
It turned out in the breakout room that everyone sees something different.
That's so interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have? Is it a MacBook that you're using?
It is. Yeah, it's a MacBook Air.
So if you click on space instead of opening it in preview, you might see what I see.
Okay. Let me try that. If I click on what instead of preview?
On just the space.
Oh, okay.
If you have the file and you click on space.
I don't know if I know how to do that.
You choose the file with your mouse and then you just click on space. Yeah. And then there's like a short preview.
I don't know what I'm sorry to say this, but I don't know what it means to click on space. So does anyone else want to download it and share their screen?
Well, I mean, this is also fine, but like okay. I have, instead of the gray, I have a lot of different colors. Maybe I can share my screen.
Oh, please do. Yeah, I'll stop sharing. I did make it so that anyone could share, so you should be able to.
Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's what I see.
Ah, okay.
Oh, now it's gone. Basically, oh, now it's completely gone. Okay. Basically, what I did is I opened the file as a text. It's a JPEG, a screenshot of my letter that I wrote. I opened it as a text file, so I transformed it into a text file, and then I play with the code of the image, and basically I repasted the words that I wrote in the letter a couple of times, mixed the code up, and then I saved it as a JPEG, and that's what came out. So it's a lot of what you spoke about earlier, an experiment. It's basically an experiment because I have no idea what the computer will do with the information that I put in. And it turned out very glitchy, so everyone sees something else actually. But this is what I see normally.
That's a fantastic aspect to your sort of collaboration with technology, right? As it becomes all of our collaborations with technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, wait, let me.
It looks like I have one more from Coco that I think just downloaded, or it wants me to download it again.
No, it's just the screenshot from the
Oh, okay. Gotcha, you got what he got. And then Amy said that she emailed me, so why don't I pull that one from my email?
Mine, I've had this interesting moment where I actually wanted to do something like a performance bit with one of the sentences that I had written. Was that what I'm trying to do, I was using Edge. Is that the sentence is that we are greater than the sum of our parts. And I wanted to do something about that. But then in the end, I ended up tearing the letter up to make money bits.
Oh, wow.
So there's lots of different, says green, 100 euros. And there's just loads of them. And so I ended up tearing up the thing that I wanted to do about how special we are as together as a sum of all the things to make space for money, which is what we actually need. So it ended up being this like reflective like cycle of what's actually happening to class as well. So yeah.
That's fun.
Amazing. I love everybody's like I love that you get to see, or that we all get to see the process. And it was kind of like being a little bit mischievous by like sneaking something in and just being like, oh, Liz wants to make one thing, and then I'm just gonna try to get everybody to like tear it apart and do something else with it. And it was sort of a reflection also on COVID, you know, like so many artists had finished work going up in galleries, and then all of a sudden, you know, unforeseen circumstances, and then you have to be inventive and figure out, okay, well, what is my work now that, you know, there's no physical space. So that was a little bit of inspiration for this little gameplay. What we can do, if you haven't shared your images already, if you want to take a photo of your image and send it to Liz, you sent your email address.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat again.
Okay. If you guys want to send it to Liz, and then we can just have a collection of like the letters and what they became, and we can share that with everybody. It'd be really nice to view.
Oh, I accidentally only just put my email in a private message to Amy, so hold on. After saying I knew how to use Zoom. There's my email address if you'd like to email it to me.
Perfect, thank you. There was one question I read from Manuel, which was in the chat. I want to answer this. Talking about nonsense and then curation. So he asks, what would you find interesting, important tools that you use to experience about the info curation process? So if I'm getting this correctly, it's about which kind of tools I use to think about how to curate. Correct me if I'm wrong, just feel free to like send a chat, Manuel, or send a message in the chat. But that's a really interesting question, because curating, I'm not trained in curating. I'm trained in, well, I guess I'm trained in dance, business, and photography, and sociology. And so curating was a response to not having any motivation to make something in isolation. I was just like in a very dark place after all of my artwork and backups were stolen. I was like trying to move to London and had been denied. So I was like back living in New York in a place that I had left. And it was just a really weird experience of like not feeling grounded in any way. And not just like not having a home, but also not having the objects and things that I had previously defined myself by. Which was kind of amazing now looking back. But curating for me was a way to regroup and to reach out, and was a way to make without having to go like too deep inside my psyche. It was a way to socialize. And so the tools, I wouldn't say that I had I didn't really organize any tools. I kind of just worked from interest, and what I had found out was super fascinating. So the first thing that I had done as a curator was talk to the artists I already know. And I think as an artist, I had, you know, you make submissions to exhibitions, to residencies, and you later realize that a lot of these things are being like there's an entire network that you're trying to engage with, and it's not, if you're a really amazing artist, then yes, you potentially would be chosen for a residency or an exhibition, but it's more about, like, art world is highly social, so it's more about trust and engaging with people that you know. And in doing that, you find out who you're marginalizing and how you're complicit in some like really rough systemic issues. And this is something I found in myself, and that was kind of challenging and great to deal with. And so the tools that I started to gain from that experience was just to like do way more research in how to open myself up, be more vulnerable, have confrontational conversations, and engage with communities maybe I don't necessarily feel comfortable in, or like, but I want to feel comfortable in it. The idea is to like get outside of yourself, and how do you do that? And so the tools that I had for curating, sorry, this is like a really long response, but the tools that I had found for curating were mostly just personal tools, how to get outside my normal behaviors and my normal patterns, which only introduce me to like a certain framework of and a certain organization of people. So how to get out of that, and how to be ready for the conversations that would happen in that movement. Yeah. I don't know if that was a helpful answer, but that's my answer. Does anybody else have any questions for Liz and I, or comments about the experience?
I have a question, I think. Well, it's probably a bit ill-formed, but the notion of collaboration between me and the materials, and was, because I mean, there's something that I'm working on that is, I'm still sort of working out what it is, and so but when that was said, I thought, well, what's the difference between that and what has formerly been called process art, where the art is doing the process and it doesn't quite matter what the outcome is? Because I'm not necessarily saying they're the same, but I'm thinking that the thing that makes them not the same is the thing that I think is interesting to try to grasp in a way out of this workshop. Does that make sense at all?
You're talking, sorry, just to
it was a comment that Liz made in one of her slides, and she said collaboration, the work is a collaboration between me and the materials, and I can identify with that to an extent, though I kind of feel like I'm not too sure what my work is a collaboration between me and what the thing is, or this particular work that I do. And so it reminded me of this thing, you know, if you once I submitted to an exhibition entry and it said, oh, describe your, you know, e.g., is it process art, is it this? And I respond badly to those sorts of, you know, categorize yourself in this way kind of thing. So that's why it stuck in my mind. I thought, oh, stop calling things these silly names. But I thought, well, process art, I just looked up the definition. It says it's concerned with the actual doing, and but they say as human expression, but human beings are intelligent, aren't they? They don't have to kind of just splurge paint around. So in a way, your work with the marble or the glass sphere is a sort of form of human expression, but they're not less concerned with the end product. But I think there's something interesting going on with the way that both of you are talking about how your end product starts informing the next end product sort of thing.
Yeah,
so in a way, I just thought it was interesting to think about the difference between collaboration between somebody and something.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I understand your question.
Okay.
I guess the first thing that I would say is it doesn't really, if you feel like those kind of definitions are limiting, then don't use them. I think that's fair. I don't think of myself as a process-based artist because I think of process-based art as procedural, and I'm pretty chaotic. So
And then
You see, I have a kind of
okay.
a sort of something of
Could I finish?
allowing. Yeah, sorry.
Sure.
Because I wouldn't necessarily say that being chaotic is not procedural. That's all I'd say.
Okay. I think that if you're saying that part of that definition is that it inherently means you don't care about the outcome, I tend to stop once I like the outcome. So the outcome is a big part of the process.
Yes.
When I like the outcome, when the outcome is meaningful to me, I know I'm done.
Yeah.
Does that help at all?
Yeah. I think that's quite interesting. Well, I mean, you know, as I said, my thinking around the question is ill-formed, so I thought I'd ask something, but
yeah, no, I also think it's like really pointed that there are all these frameworks in the art world that make you have to define your art in a certain way, and most of us are chaotic, you know. The way that I think art, I can't really speak for everybody, but I'll definitely speak for myself. The way that my art brain works, it makes absolutely no sense. But in order, like, art has to be communicative. I mean, unless it's just art for yourself, but if it's like art for the masses, it has to be communicative. So it has to be organized in a certain system of language, like a certain language system. That doesn't necessarily mean that the system is right, which is unfortunate, though, because it's the system that that carries us forward and moves you forward as an artist. But like over time, it changes. But I like for process-based art, I feel like all art is process-based in the sense that I'm always in the process, and I have I don't know, I have projects that I've shown today. None of them really feel fully finished, but they're things that I have done, and they make sense that I have done them because there is a single thread through all of my work.
That's something that I quite like about Edge, though, having sort of discovered it more in more recent times, is a sort of allowing for saying I'm looking at this rather than, you know, here's my finished product. And I think it's very unusual for its crossover. That's why I like it. Or the natural, like talking about library. So I'm an ex-library manager, and I've always felt kind of struggled with this whole categorization of people and sort of saying, you know, art must be derived from, or it must be about, or the way that you describe what you do must be in a particular way. So an organization that combines things, which I presume you're interested in because you're giving this workshop through that organization, is it's something that interests me because of being interested in lots of things. I don't think there's many traditional galleries that I don't know that they so hugely favour people who say, well, I kind of research this and write about that, but I'm also an artist. I don't know
One way to think about it is, if this is sort of like helpful as a parting way to think about it, that in part the outcome matters because the viewer or the audience matters, right? If you think of art as a type of communication, then it can't only be about your process. It has to be about the way that you're engaging with your audience. And if you're making visual material, you're engaging with the audience through that visual material. So what it is does matter.
Oh yes. No, I fully understand. I fully understand that. Yeah, because I'm not a fan of work that doesn't. I think my question just now was just, you know, sort of defining yourself to galleries and how to describe how your thinking or who you are intersects across many disciplines, or what people would think of as many separate disciplines. And I think, I mean, perhaps that's changing. But
I think you're sort of identifying the ways in which capitalism limits art.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I can think about it. Thank you.
Sure. If you're trying to market yourself and you find marketing yourself to be limiting, that's because it is, right?
I see. Yeah, yeah. No, it is. I find it a huge challenge. You know, I'm associated with an artist group who say, you know, oh, to get into a gallery, you've got to have your own website, you've got to have this, you've got to have that, and you've got to have your statement. And I have difficulty with all of that, really.
Yeah, I think it's because there's two modes of thinking, right? There's thinking about producing culture for an audience, and then there's thinking about marketing yourself for a consumer, and those are different things.
Yeah, I mean, my personal tutor, when I did my degree in fine art, said to me, it's not for the artist to know what they do, that's for the philosopher to interpret your work. And so I find it hard to step between the two, really.
Well, think about your work before we sort of say goodbye. The advice I'll give you, for better or worse, is this. Think about your work as dream interpretation, right? You don't interpret a dream while you're having it. You only know what it's about afterward.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it, what it's about while you're making it. Figure out what it's about once you feel like you're done with it.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Does anybody, sorry, please, does anybody else have any questions before we go?
Do you still live in a camera, Liz?
On and off. That place was in Brooklyn, and I lived in it for a few years. When I moved to Philadelphia, I put up sort of a more temporary structure out of cardboard that I can sort of put back as I like to. So I'm not married to it in the same kind of way. I have been working on a mobile tent, which actually poses a new challenge, which is that I started working on a mobile tent when an audience was possible for an installation. So I'm rethinking that.
I guess my question to both of you and to everyone really is, like, you know, the whole idea is that the research actually never ends, right? And that you can't really reach truth. You're kind of just sort of playing around with understanding it and reconceptualizing it and maybe finding little nuggets. So yeah, you know, when you have something that you can share, I guess that's when it makes sense to kind of turn it into something that you show.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
But that doesn't mean the process ends, right?
No.
Like, you keep going and going.
That's very well put. Thank you. What do you think, Ashley?
I'm just trying to figure out how to unmute myself. Yeah, I think there's one question, like, I think that there's one question that each artist or maybe each human is seeking. And the answer is not 42, but there is no answer, right? We're all seeking one question, and there is no answer for that one question, but along the way you get these revelations that happen where you're like, yes, that is what that meant. That is what that feeling was. That is why that failed. And those in a sense are the truths of this like question that you're asking. And so, like, for example, the work that I had shown you, I feel like there are different projects, but they're all asking sort of the same thing. It's all about understanding the complexities of like the human body, or the complexities of like just being a body and having consciousness. But then there are all these like tiny little bits about that that change over time. You know, I'm not who I was when I was making art at 16 or 20 or 27. And so each project is definitely a map of time. And it's just interesting to see how they change and how the question changes and how I can get deeper in that question and how more questions emerge from getting deeper. And it's just madness and it's messy, but yeah, I think that there is one single question and many different truths.
And I yeah, okay. I think so. I think that's like a really interesting way to think about a particular artist kind of as well, right? Like they're you know, they are who they are, and that changes and develops, but at their core, you know, maybe they're still kind of thinking in the same ways along the same themes. And so when you're looking at like what they're doing over time, right? Maybe they're working on different projects, but common between all those projects is still the same person who's kind of thinking about the same things, maybe.
Yeah. I once had a friend who's an artist who said this. I don't know if it's true, but he was talking about the minds of artists and the minds of schizophrenics being very similar, except that artists found a way to kind of deal with the brain. So he's talking about the operation of our brains being very similar to schizophrenics. And I don't know, it resonated with me. I have no idea if it's true or real or what, but the idea is that we use art to handle like that madness. Made sense. Yeah, it made sense. So art in itself is like a way to organize. Yeah. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say I've long term been interested in the notion of art being evidence for something, and I don't know whether anybody has anything to say about that. In the same way as a written research paper might be taken as evidence of something. When I saw the title of this workshop, I thought it was quite interesting. I quite like the idea of an artist finding something through what they do, which then sort of is taken more seriously as forming part of the body of knowledge, really. And because I've worked in sort of knowledge management type context or whatever, is that sort of and enjoyed doing funny cataloguing and things like that, but is that you know, is there a peer review system? Is it set apart or isn't it? You know, a sort of visual knowledge, the image as a truth, really, as much as a written essay could be. Is that something that you've ever thought about as part of this idea of art as research?
That's a really good question. My gut instinct is that there is nothing akin to the rigor of a peer review, like a scientific peer-reviewed study. There is sort of like an aspect to community opinion and then larger public opinion that either buoys or sinks kind of the life of a work of art, but that process is much more organic and less systematic, I think.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I think we have to say goodbye now because it's perfect time here. Thank you, Ashley and Liz. That was very, very interesting. I had a lot of fun actually. So I will drop again our links, the PayPal link and Edge's website where you can find Liz's and Ashley's information. And anyways, you can email us or contact us. Thanks for coming, everyone. That's all I have.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It was really lovely and having you guys participate, and I hope it was informative, helpful, fun, all the things.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for having us, Edge.
Interesting.
Thank you for the talk. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. See you guys next time in a month. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay tuned for the next edition.
Yes.
Yeah, good job, gang. Great.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the great questions.
Yeah, thanks. I hope you guys had a good time.
Yeah.
I did. I really did.